So today we are going to talk about Azure storage. Maybe you must be already aware storage is nothing but it is a service. Using that or it enables us to store our files and folders or any sort of data, right? So this is one of the service which will enables you to store your data, okay? And in Azure there are four types of services are available. The first one is blob storage, second one is file storage, third one is table storage, and the last one is queue storage. So each and every storage type will help us to store some sort of data. Some sort of data can be stored in each and every services. In the next slide, I'm going to explain what and all each the storage types are available. Okay. If you look at this slide, the first one we are talking about is the blob storage. The blob storage is nothing but we call it as binary large object storage. Blob is nothing but binary large object. Okay, so you can store any sort of data in this blob one. So in the blob storage, you can store any types of data, okay, and that data can be a bigger size. It is similar to your data drive or your E drive. Okay, in your laptop you may have your D drive or you may have your E drive or whatever drive you have, but that storage will allow you to keep any sort of data. You can store your music files, MP3 files, or movies. You can store your Excel files, text file, no matter what. All sort of data can be stored in the blobs, and blob is a cheaper storage. Performance compared to others, performance is little less, but it is a cheaper storage. So the main thing is it will allow you to store unstructured data. So unstructured data means it supports all sort of data. There is no segregation. You can only store mp3, you can only store uh, videos, or you can only store files and folders. Not like that. Okay, you can store everything and anything in the blob storage, and that is why we call it as blob is binary large object. It will help you to store larger amount of data, and it will allow you to store the unstructured data. That is called as blob storage, and blob storage is cheaper storage. The next one is queue storage. So queue storage is nothing but any sort of queue concept based data. Say for example, your phone pay transactions, your Google Pay transactions, your ATM transactions, anything that is following the queue concept, like first in first out. So such kind of data will be stored in the queue storage. Okay, and the queue storage size is very less. Actually, maximum one message size will be around 64 KB, and after 7 days the data, the queue gets cleared. Anything more than 7 days data will not be there in the queue storage. So that is why when you do any kind of transactions, either phone pay or Google Pay, they will give you the timings within 24 hours or within 48 hours your transactions will be fulfilled. So within that time it has to be cleared. Okay, because that follows the queue concept, first in and first out concept. Actually, that is called as queue storage. Basically, the banking related thing, they will use this queue storage options. The next one is Azure file storage. Azure file storage is nothing but it allow you to store any sort of organizational data. So I was explaining, when I was explaining about the Windows, I explained about the file storage. So file storage means what? It is a file server. There will be a file server. It will allow you to store all your data, your tower wise data, your department wise data. Correct, right? And multiple people will be accessing that. But if you go for Azure file storage, you don't need to manage that server. That file server is there, right? You don't need to manage that file server. You don't need to manage the operating system, and you don't need to manage the any kind of maintenance activity and all. This Azure file storage itself you can leverage as a file server, because it will allow you to store all the data, your files, excel sheet, ppts, or any sort of data, and at a time you can share it to the multiple pupils also. Say for example, you have an office in Bangalore, but people from other locations also access the same data. Say for example, people are from Hyderabad, they're accessing Pune, they're accessing Delhi, they're accessing Chennai, they're accessing Mysore, they're accessing at a time. Multiple pupils are accessing the same data. Okay, if that is the scenario, you can go with the Azure file storage. Then the last one is table storage. So the table storage is a thing, but any sort of DB kind of, or the details kind of a data, like your employee details, your student database. Okay, so such kind of information will be stored in the tables. Anything that has got your first name, last name, your age, your date of birth, or your qualification, pass out year, any sort of table wise data can be accommodated in the table storage. Or in a layman term, it will allow you to store no SQL data. Okay, that is called as table storage. Any question here? Okay. Okay. So the in the all these things will be available in a concept called storage account. So in the Azure, we have the storage service in a format, or in a name called storage accounts. So there are three types of storage accounts. Okay. The first one is general purpose version 1, the middle one. If you look at this general purpose version 1, it is the older version. It is actually a very older version. The first version of storage account came with very limited features. Okay, like it does not had multiple region supported. When you keep the data will be there within the same region only. Okay, and it's a older version and it is cheaper now. But if I talk about the general purpose version 2, it is a newer version compared to the version 1. Okay, and it has got additional features which are, when you keep a data in zone 1, to safeguard the data, it will keep the copy of the same data in multiple regions. That is why we call it as ZRS, zone redundant storage. Even one zone get collapsed also, or submerged also, or it got fired also, you have your data in other region. That is called as zone redundant option. And this is compared to the version 1. This is little expensive, little expensive, not much, little expensive. Okay, so that is the difference between version 1 and version 2. Version 1 is a cheaper, version 2 is a little expensive. Version 1 does not support ZRS, version 2 supports ZRS. And performance wise, version 1 little less, but version 2 is little quicker. And the next one is blob storage account. So blob storage is nothing but, we've already discussed, blob is nothing but it's binary large object where you have an intention of storing large number of data, and that data will be there for longer time for archival purpose. Say for example, you have a company. That company has got some historical data like 15, 20, 30 years data in the on-premises, and you want to keep that files and folder for longer time. You don't know, indefinite of time. You don't know how long you are going to keep that data, but you want to safeguard that data. If that is the case, you can go with this archival tiering. Okay, that is very, very cheaper. If a normal storage account costs you 10 rupees per some 10 GB, this archival will only charge about 2 rupees for 10 GB. So it's close to 70-80% cheaper compared to the normal standard storage and the archival storage. Okay, that's about the storage account type. There are three storage accounts: version 1, version 2, and the blob storage account. So let me move on to the next slide. Here, now let us understand what are all the features we will get it in the storage account. The first one is durable and high available. Means when you keep your data in the Azure storage account, Azure takes care of our data no matter what. Okay, they will maintain multiple copy of our data and they will keep it in multiple zones. If anything goes wrong also, we will be able to pull up the data from other zone. So it is highly durable and highly available. So Microsoft gives us 99.9999 percentage of the guarantee. Okay, the data will be 100% available no matter what, whether the hardware failure is there, whether the zone failure is there, or regional failure is there, no matter what, but Microsoft ensures our data is highly available, and you can store the data n number of years, n number of days. There is no limitations. Okay, it is available anytime and anywhere. The data can be synced to multiple regions to ensure the durability and the high availability. That is the feature of one of the feature of our Azure storage account. And the security, if I talk about the security, the data is end-to-end encrypted. Even Microsoft does not have the visibility what data you are going to store in the storage account. Even Microsoft does not know what is stored inside the storage account. Means that much of high encryption Microsoft follows. So you have to give the passphrase. Even if you forgot the passphrase, you will not be able to recover the data. Such that level of security you Microsoft ensures. The next one is scalability. See, in the traditional data center, if you want to plan for some storage, you need to see how much data I'm going to incur every week, every month, and at the end of the year, how much data I'm going to accommodate, right? So, say for example, per 1 year, if your data is about 10 GB, for 10 years, if you want to plan, you have to go with 1 terabyte. Correct. So the 10 year you have to plan now only. So since your data is going for 1 terabyte for 10 years, now only you have to purchase the 1 terabyte of storage now. Correct. And after 1 terabyte is going to come to like 90% or 92%, then again you have to increase your storage capacity. But in case of Azure, it is not like that. So you forget about the maintenance. You forget about the capacity. Everything is scalable, auto scalable. Today, you just keep 2 MB of file. You will get the bill for only for 2 MB. Tomorrow, suddenly you want to put some 100 GB. You can put it. Day after tomorrow, you want to put around 1 terabyte. You can put it. So the storage capacity is automatically scalable. You don't need to worry about the capacity. There is no capacity crunch at all in case of Azure storage. And you can define, if you don't want to, if you know that any data which is older than 60 days and I am not using that much, you can enable the lifecycle management also. So when you enable the lifecycle management in the Azure storage account, the storage account makes sure any data which is more than 60 days, you can move to multiple tiers, like hot tier. From hot means frequently accessible. Every day you are accessing the data, that is called hot tier. Cold tier means you may not be very frequently accessing. Maybe you are accessing like 3 months or once in 4 months, something like that. Then archival storage is there. Archival means you are not at all using it. You are only storing that. Whenever there is some requirement comes, then only you will be reading that data or using that data. So when you enable like any data which is more than 60 days, move to cold tiering. Any data which is more than six or older than 6 months, you move that to the archival. So you can enable the lifecycle management that will help you to reduce your cost also. So that is called as scalable and the other features. Managed. Next one is managed storage. Managed storage means whenever you want to do any kind of maintenance at your on premises or if you're a traditional way, you have to plan for the downtime. Okay, if you have a file server, if you want to patch, you have to maintain yourself. You have to do the patching, restart the server, and ensure all the services are up and running after the patch installation, and all the services, everybody is able to access the thing. But in case of managed storage in Azure, you don't need to worry about any kind of hardware maintenance or any sort of update installations like patches or any kind of firmware installation for hardwares. Okay, everything will be taken care by Microsoft and you will be hectic free. There is no hectic, there is no, you don't have to maintain anything. Everything will be managed and maintained by Microsoft. It's a managed service. Managed service means you don't need to manage. Everything will be taken care by the Microsoft. You just have to use it as a service, and that service will be available 24 by 7, 365 days. There is no downtime at all. That is called as managed storage. And accessible. If you talk about the access, if you want to access the data, how can I access the data from Azure storage account? Yes. So Azure storage account enables you to access the data on HTTP and HTTPS using port number 80 or 80 443 HTTPS. You can access your data from anywhere of the world. If you have internet, you can access the data from anywhere of the world. If you have your local area network also, that time also you will be able to access your data. So these are all the features of Azure storage account. And if you want to know more about blob storage, see here, blob is nothing but binary large object. Okay, it is optimized for storing the massive amount of unstructured data. Okay, you can dump anything that you wanted. You can store all sort of datas, and if your data is huge amount of GBs and TBs, you can just opt for the blob storage. So blob storage is used for serving the images and documents directly to the browser. Like if you want to access any sort of pictures or movies, okay, you can just leverage this one. Okay, your Netflix, your OTT, all those things, right? You store n number of movies, n number of content actually in the OTTs and YouTube or wherever, right? Everybody uses the blob storage only. You see here, you have a storage account here, and pictures and movies within a container. You can create multiple folders, pictures and movies. And within the pictures, again, you can store picture 1, picture 2, picture 3. In movies, you can put movies 1, movies 2, movies 3, like that. Means any sort of things can be placed within your data storage account data unit. Okay. So you see here, streaming the videos and music. You can store your videos and music. Storing the data backup, disaster recovery. You can store your data backup and disaster recovery content also there. And you can store your archival data. And objects in the blob storage will be accessed from anywhere in the world using internet via HTTP and HTTPS. I told you, right? The storage can be accessible anywhere over the world. You just have to need the connectivity. That connectivity can be internet or intranet. You will be able to access it. Okay. So in the blob storage, if you look at here, three types of resources are there. The storage account, the first one is the storage account, and within the storage account, you are going to create containers. The same thing. Account name is data. Container name can be pictures and movies, and the blobs within the container can be your pictures, movies. All those things are there. So this is all the overall visibility, and this is the overall explanation about the blob storage. Very simple. You have to take only 2-3 points here. Blob means it is binary large object. As the name itself is telling, you can store large amount of data here, and it is allow you to store the unstructured data. Unstructured means you can store any sort of data. Your movies, MP3 files, folders, text files, JPEG, any sort of data can be accommodated there. And the hierarchy, you will have a storage account. Within that, you will have the container, and within the container, you have the blobs. That's the blob storage hierarchy. Next, how to identify the storage account, how the storage account name will be appeared. If you look at here http:// my storage account .blob.core.windows.net. So my storage account name is my storage account only. So if somebody asks you what is your storage account name, my storage account name is this one only, my storage account. That itself is my storage account, and the remaining is the complete URL blob.core.windows.net. That is common. That core.windows.net is common for all the storage accounts. You create n number of storage accounts. Maybe you create today storage account 1, and the complete URL of the storage account is like storage account 1.blob.core.windows.net. Okay, that is the thing. And if you want to know more about the container, see, a container organizes a set of blobs similar to the directory in a file system. You can create n number of container here. See, you can create pictures, you can create movies, you can create files and folders. N number of containers can be created, and within each container you can create n number of blobs also. And there are 3 types of blobs in Azure. One is block blob, append blob, and page blob. When you talk about the block blob, Okay, it will allow you to store the text and the binary data, and the maximum the block capacity will be up to 4.7 terabyte. Okay, and each and every block can be managed individually. Okay, they will, you can separately 4.7 terabyte is there, right? You want, if you want to move, you have to move 4.7 terabyte of the thing. Okay, like that you can have multiple blocks. When I talk about the append, whenever you have the data, it always append the data. Like, you have 100 db 100 GB of data. Now you want to make some changes, then it has become 101 GB. So such kind of append, existing data can be appended. Such scenario we can use the append blob. And page blobs actually used for the structured data. It stores the random access data file up to 8 terabyte. Means page blob is nothing but it will allow you to store the structured data, and maximum capacity will be 8 terabyte. In each page blobs, okay, like, you have your virtual hard disk. Say for example, when you are running the virtual machine, as soon as you power on the virtual machine, that virtual hard disk will get loaded to the hardware in the data center, and some hardware will be there in the data center, and that hardware will load your operating system and start running. When you shut down the server, or when you deallocate the server, or when you stop the server in the cloud, that operating system will be released from the hardware, and hardware will be freed up, and that virtual hard disk will be there, right? Your operating system, that will get stored in the page blob, and the maximum capacity of that is 8 terabyte. Okay, basically to store your virtual hard disk and other information. Okay, that is called as page blob. And if you see, page blobs are collection of 512 bytes pages. One page will be within this 8 terabyte, multiple pages will be there. Okay, so each page will be a 512 bytes pages. Okay, which provide the ability to read, write, or arbitrary ranges of the bytes. Hence, page blobs are ideal for storing the index-based sparse data structure like OS and data disk or VMs database, etc. Okay, basically it is ideal to store your operating system kind of a data. Okay, so VMs, database, etc. Okay, Azure SQL DBs. Example, even the Azure SQL database also uses the page blob. See, you don't need to worry about all those things. Your main takeaway of this is the first slide, and I have given more information here because you should have what is the capacity limitations and all, right? That's why I have given this slide. Okay, your takeaways: blob means binary large object. It stores unstructured data. Okay, it will have containers. Within the container you can create the blobs, and there are three types of blobs: black blob, append blob, page blob. Block blob means it works as a separate block. 4.7 terabyte of each block will be there. Append blob will be used for appending operations. Page blob will be used for your virtual hard disk and other kind of storages. And your storage account will be looks like my storage account .blob.core.windows.net. This core.windows.net will be always common. If it is a blob, it will just add blob.core.windows.net. If it is a page, it will be like, q.core.windows.net. Okay, it will be like that. Then the Azure file storage, this is important actually. So Azure file storage is one of the storage type, as you're already aware. Okay, when you have the data which is accessible by multiple VMs or multiple peoples, okay, and it is accessed via SMB, if that is the case, you can use your Azure file storage. Means if you want to leverage a storage replacing your file server, then you can use it a file storage in the Azure. It is a managed service. You don't need to manage the server. Okay, you don't need to worry about the maintenance activity. All these things can be managed and maintained by Azure itself. So Azure files and can be used for multiple scenarios. Okay, you can replace you can replace or supplement on-premises file server. I told you, right? If you want to replace or supplement your on-premises file server, you can use the Azure file storage. Or if you want to store your on-premises data to the cloud, that time also you can use the Azure file storage. I told you, right? You have an older hardware at your on-premises. It has got about terabytes or petabytes of data, and that hardware is a older hardware. your that hardware is not in the support now. Vendor is not supporting. Maybe it is an IBM or an HP server, but the vendor is not supporting because it's a very old server, and you don't want to invest the cost. So what you decided, you have decided to lift and shift the data to the cloud storage. That time you can leverage the Azure file storage and move all the data from on premises to the cloud, and you can shut down the server which is there at the on premises. So here, without even investing huge money for buying the server, you can just leverage the Azure file service and store the data there, and then you can enable the lifecycle management, and you can even reduce the cost there. Okay, that is the file storage. The benefits of the file storage is like shared access. You can multiple people can be access the files and folders at the same time, and it's a managed service. You don't need to manage, you don't need to maintain anything. If any hardware failure happens at the data center, Microsoft only replaces the hardware. You don't need to worry about that. You don't even know what exactly happening at the data center. Everything is managed service here. Resiliency, you don't need to worry about the availability, you don't need to worry about the cooling system, you don't need to worry about the data outage. Everything is managed by Microsoft because they have multiple, it's not a single point of failure. They ensure the data is safeguarded in multiple ways. And you can also use some scripting and all. You can do the tooling, and you can slice and dice your data when you use Azure file storage. You can use PowerShell scripts, you can do other tools also. Say for example, there are lakhs together files are there, and if you want to pull out the data which is specific to some keyword, or which is modified in some certain days, or the data, the file size is less than 5 MB, if you want to list, everything will be supported by this Azure file storage. PowerShell will be supporting tooling, multiple tools can be used. That is what the Azure file storage is about. The takeaway of this slide is Azure file storage is the replacement for the on-premises file server. The data can be accessed by multiple peoples, and it's a managed service, and it has got high resiliency, and it supports multiple tools and scripting also. That is the takeaway of this slide. Next one is queue storage. So queue storage I already explained you. Queue is nothing but first come, first out. You go to a movie theater, you want to buy tickets. You went and stood first, and you took the ticket and you came out. So that is called as queue concept. Any sort of transactional data, any sort of queue based transactional data, they will use this queue storage. Maximum the capacity, the storage will be 67 kilobytes. Okay, and maximum 7 days you can retain. After 7 days the data gets purged and the data get deleted. The common uses of the queue storage is creating a backlog of work to process synchronizes. Multiple queue can be have at a time. Means if you want to have the backlogs, say for example, there is an ATM transaction, or maybe some online RTGS transaction will be there. So as soon as you put, you will not your money will not be getting transferred. So at a time there are 1000 users are initiated the transaction. Whoever submitted first, it will go to the queue. The second, third, like that. Then bank will make sure the information is valid or not. Yes, the sender is authentic, the receiver bank is correct, the details are correct. Is there money is there in the sender account? Yes, then it will clear the transactions. This is what the queue based transactions actually. So first in, first out. Even the ATM transactions also, even the your phone pay and Google Pay transactions also, it happens in the same manner. Okay, this is the queue storage. And if you see the queue storage, the same thing, my storage account dot q dot core dot windows dot net. If it is a if it is a queue storage, it will start with q dot core dot windows dot net. If it is a blob storage, it is like blob dot core dot windows dot net. So basically this core dot windows dot net is common in all the storages. So by looking at the storage account name itself, you will be able to identify, yes, this is my page, this is my queue, this is my blob. Okay. And if you look at the last one, the table storage, the table storage you are already aware. It is part of Azure Cosmos database and the MongoDB. You might have heard MongoDB and all. Okay, the NoSQL database we call it as. Okay, So not only structure query language, that is called as NoSQL language, people will call it as. So that kind of storage will be stored in the table. Like in an example, your employee details, how many number of employees are there, serial number, employee name, employee id, date of joining, designation, his address, his phone number, all those things will be there in a table format. Similarly, student information, college name, which year, which branch, okay, which semester is he doing, what is his phone number, what is his address, what is his previous thing, everything will be stored in the table storage. So such kind of information will be stored in the table storage. The common uses, storing the TBs of structured data, capable of serving web scale applications, quickly querying the data using a clustered indexes. Means for large number of databases like employee details or student information, any sort of that NoSQL sort of data, it will be used. So basically, for the data engineering, all those things will be there. No? They will use this sort of data actually. Yeah. Person database, all those things. You see, when you talk about the employees, it is less. But when you look at the service provider like Airtel, Vodafone, all these peoples, right? They have huge amount of data, enormous number of data. So they will use this table storage kind of a thing actually. Okay, that's about the overall storage accounts. Any questions here, guys? I'll stop the recording for now, 1 second, and then I'll take the question. Thank you.